This episode is brought to you by the Pelora Group.
Welcome back to Winning Through Culture.
I'm Tim Flanagan.
And I'm Amanda Kramer.
When culture's not a priority, people aren't a priority. Having an intentional focus helps you as a leader remain impactful and relevant as you move your business forward.
Welcome to Winning Through Culture. Well, welcome back to another episode of Winning Through Culture. Tim and I are really excited today to be with sales performance coach, and I would have to say a friend of ours who's been really involved in supporting our firm, our daily life. Dave Resseguie is with us today, and we're going to be talking about the difference between control and influence, and ultimately creating client experiences that truly leave your clients attached to you and ultimately the value that you provide in the practice that you're building. Whether that is a small business, whether that's in the financial services space like we are on our daily basis, or if you're thinking about just the community that you're serving. How are you creating and controlling 100% the things you can control? And then how are you influencing the rest? So Dave, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for the invitation. Excited to spend the time with y'all.
Yeah, we were kind of joking earlier. Dave has been in our firm quite significantly lately. So this is like the third day in a row we've had an opportunity to connect. So really excited for the conversation.
Same here.
So to hop right into it, you spend a lot of time in the coaching relationships that you've built, and you do keynote speaking. You kind of cover the gamut. But when we're talking about controlling 100% of the things you can control and influencing the rest, what initially comes to mind when you're starting that conversation with those that you're coaching?
Yeah, like the absolute first thing that comes to my mind, because I do so much work with helping entrepreneurs and advisors get introduced to new prospective clients, is what are all the things that we're in control of as it relates to getting introduced to great prospective clients, right? Like we're in control that we ask people to help our team extend our impact out there in the world and introduce us, or we're in control of our language and the words that we use, or our processes, or we're in control of our activity, right? But we're not in control of whether or not people actually give us phone numbers or email addresses of people. So whenever we're not in control of an outcome, I have to ask myself, like, is there anything that we can do to influence a very comfortable scenario? So that's the first thought that comes to mind.
Yeah. Well, and when you talk about a comfortable situation or scenario, a lot of it, I think, goes from a mindset perspective. So can you elaborate a little bit on how we can control the mindset that we approach as entrepreneurs, business owners, when we are going and trying to develop those relationships and ultimately building that client experience?
Love that question. I was actually on a Zoom call prior to this interview, this podcast, with a client here in the Carolinas. And they were talking about going to different networking events and how in their mind, they felt that they were going to these events and they wanted to generate meetings with prospective clients from those networking meetings, but they almost felt like they were being a bit selfish going to those events. And my mindset around influencing relationships is I encourage people to think about that prospecting or influencing relationships actually is the most selfless thing that you can do. We've got to think about, why are we there to serve other people? What is it about our value that we want to bring to the world that would benefit them, so we can seek first to serve, and as a result, perhaps build a thriving financial planning practice?
Well, and it's a really interesting point, because oftentimes people will come back to the ability to bless others, right? And whatever word you want to use there, service them, support them, bless them. And your vision around the Resseguie Group, right, is to be blessed so that we can ultimately bless others. How do you see that play into the clients that you're working with, knowing that, you're primarily focused in the financial advisor space, but entrepreneurs and business owners in any industry, I think, can apply that same methodology to how they're approaching their relationships?
Yeah, I love that you even knew that. That's amazing, because I care so much about that. Like, I'll be somewhat transparent and vulnerable the way I approach that in my business, right? Like for me, there's a lot of organizations that I care about charitably or philanthropically. So with many of my client relationships, my clients also care about those organizations. I'll give one silly example, but it's one that's near and dear to my heart. Like I'm a board member for FCA. It's the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And I've increasingly become involved up here at Clemson FCA and even with FCA in Charlotte and in the upstate of South Carolina. So I just look for opportunities when revenue comes to our company to funnel that revenue to different organizations that I care about that just serve the world in ways that I agree with or that I value. So, when I think about being blessed by winning relationships with clients, the first question that I ask is, how can we use these resources to, in fact, bless other avenues that need that blessing?
Tim, you kind of take that same approach in our daily life. I wondered if you have a little color you'd like to add there.
Yeah, I think, from a cultural perspective in an organization, Dave, I'm curious. Obviously, you are about giving back and really investing in organizations that are important to you. But what have you seen as in businesses you've worked with? Because again, I know you work with independent financial advisors that are on their own with large firms. Where have you seen that model kind of play out in creating a really dynamic culture in a firm or a larger organization?
Yeah. The specific groups that people give their time or their talent or their treasure to can vary. But a lot of times, there are negative or catastrophic events that can happen within an organization to a member of their organization. Perhaps it's a spouse of a leader in the organization that is going through a bout with cancer, or a child that passes away because of some disease, and the firm or the company really rallies around generously giving those three things, right? Their time, their talent, their treasure to organizations in a spirit of camaraderie and unity to serve the firm and the people within the firm. So I've seen that really create a lot of unity across leadership, staff, team. I've also seen it really allow those organizations to serve their local community and then all the benefits that come from it, right? A lot of times in our world, it's money gets funded to organizations that need those dollars. But more impactfully than that, there's even an overall just brand awareness of those organizations where other people start getting on board. So the unity that it brings across teams, I think, is really a special thing. And unfortunately, it does at times take setbacks to spur that on. But
yeah, I think that's a great unity. Again, when you think about cultures of organizations, certainly in a society we live in, it's been a little divided lately. Unity is a nice thing to have. Yeah, to Amanda's question, I know philosophically, at least from my vantage point, which it sounds like is yours, is, we're blessed from a financial perspective or talent. Certainly that talent can be translated into time. And I think it's incumbent, for an organization to create a culture that gives back, encourages people to give back, and effectively not only invests directly in its own people and their growth, but then invests in the community that everybody lives in. And now that's a philosophy. It's kind of an upside down paradigm, I think, for most people, but it's certainly something that has been important to us. And I certainly can say, at least in our organization, it matters to the people that work here. And in an environment where you're trying to find and keep really good people that care about giving back tend to be really good people. Certainly in our experience, and it helps that unity, if you will, and commonality of purpose.
Well, the conversations we've had with other business owners along the way, we hear often that, we're talking about this philosophy and the ability for us to give back in that way. But the intentionality behind that extends to the client that organization or that leader is serving, whether that's an employee the leader is serving, or whether that is an end client that is using the product or the skills or the services that are coming from that organization. And I think the key there is that intentional creation or designing of those touch points that allow you to share that message, to communicate, but ultimately to not necessarily overshadow all of the elements that go into building a healthy culture. And one of the things that I feel, and, having been a part of your workshops in the past and just the conversations we've had over the years, the ability to create that non-transactional relationship is essential, whether it's leader to employee or business to client. So can you expand a little bit on some of the ways in which you've seen success in businesses, and I'm just going to use that as a broad term, in businesses where they've kind of mastered that designing of the intentional touch point?
Yeah. Well, where my mind goes initially when you ask that question, right? Oftentimes when I speak, I quote Leonardo da Vinci, right? Da Vinci said that simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. I think the genius of so much of what we do is really the simple, basic habits and disciplines. So being intentional to create experiences with clients or team members, the first thought that comes to my mind is thinking about what's the best question I can ask of this individual right now, right? So often I was with someone this week and I commented to them, I said, I doubt you get told often enough how valued and appreciated you are. And the response that they gave was, no, yeah, like I crave that. I want the validation. I want the affirmation. For so many people, we're really good at talking at people, but very few people have this simple discipline of asking a great question and then giving a listening ear and then asking an awesome follow-up question. So going into interactions with the purpose of, I want to seek first to understand and then be understood, that old adage, right? People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. I think in a one-on-one interaction or even in a group interaction, seeking first to listen and then listen some more is a lost art in many ways.
Listen some more. I like that. I'm going to write that one down, Dave. Listen some more.
Silence with your friend. Expounding on Amanda's question, the kind of transactional nature of business or some businesses. What have you seen, Dave, from a standpoint of when people really focus on the experience in their interactions with people that they're having? What have you seen as the key elements of those experiences?
Reframing, to put it in one word, but I'll expand on that. People, when you're with them and you're really engaged, you ask a great question, you do listen, and they perceive that. People want to know, not only were you listening and did you hear them, but do you deeply understand them, right? In spouse relationships, in parenting relationships, in nonprofit board relationships, in client to advisor relationships. So after you've taken some time to hear the person and really listen, ask them, hey, Tim, Amanda, I've really loved the conversation that we've been having today. And it's super important to me that I'm doing an exceptional job of listening to you and really understanding the vision that you've shared with me. Hey, would y'all mind if I just take maybe 2-3 minutes and just kind of recap what I feel like I hear you sharing? And then when you look people in the eyes and say, you told me that this was something that you valued and this was a pain point that you had, and this is how you would feel if we could make progress on that. And you also said that this, when you look people in the eyes and tell them back what they told you, not just the what they wanted, but how it would make them feel when they can achieve success in that area, they now know, okay, this is an experience, not just a sale. This is a relationship, not just he wanted to get my business.
Well, and they're kind of flexing their empathy muscles, if you want to call it that, right? There's a very large component to any interaction, whether it's client-facing or not, where you need to have that ability to influence the conversation. But if people are not leaning into the empathy skill that they have or don't have, then the outcome is not going to be what they're wanting it to be. So it's just something I was noodling on as you were saying that.
Love that. Love that.
Yeah, great cultures tend to be a reflection of, I'll say, great leadership in the sense that there's a lot of modeling of behaviors. And this question obviously is somewhat self-evident, but what have you seen really great leaders do to model this behavior of creating an experience relationally? And what kind of philosophies have you seen those leaders bring to the table?
Yeah, I mean, certainly one thing is like to truly understand your people and your people's inner tribe, right? Like the best leaders that have ever served me as me being, let's say, under their leadership, they know Jennifer, they know Charlie, they know Chaz, they know Cameron, they know the people and the things that I care most about. They seek to understand the human being because they know if the individual is right, the performer, the staff person, the partner will be that much better. So one is just understanding the individual. A second thing that I see in the leaders that I appreciate the most is they are some of the best encouragers, and they get as excited as you are about the things that you're excited about. So they understand the vision that you have for what you want to achieve. And along the way, as you even make one step of progress in the direction toward your, like, let's say your most amazing future, they're there to celebrate with you. Perfect example. Like somebody told me last week that they passed a really significant exam that was going to take them to a new level of their professional development. Well, most times people just shoot you a text. Hey, I passed the exam. I think good leaders respond back with a text. Hey, great job. Proud of you. I think phenomenal leaders call immediately and they say, hey, like, bro, you can't expect me just to message you back after getting a message like that. I am so proud of you. I think even more phenomenal leaders FaceTime the individual because they're like, I just need you to know how excited I am for you and the work that you're doing. Like they're the encouragers, right? They're the optimists. They're the ones that believe in you more than you even believe in yourself. And then as you prove to yourself that you're belief worthy, the leader is there to remind you, I knew you could do it. You already had everything that you needed you inside of you. So great job. Keep it up. So big time encouragers, big time understanders.
I was going to say, when you were with us a few weeks ago, you shared a story, and it's relative in the sense of just hearing and being part of that individual's complete tribe. And you shared a story around, let's call it, and we've talked a little bit about giftology, and you can reference the book and talk a little bit about it, but the specific silver picture frame. Can you share that story and how you truly made a difference for like where it came from, why you chose to do that? Because I think it's a really great example when you're talking about being a phenomenal leader, a phenomenal connection maker, somebody that was 100% owning what they could control in that relationship. I think it's a great example if you don't just mind sharing it.
So I'm going to say two things so I don't get emotional sharing this. The first is I just needed to tell myself I'm not going to cry on a podcast because John...
It's all right if you do.
I think emotion's a strength. I just want to get through the interview. John Ruhlin is the author of Giftology. John was a dear friend and he passed a number of months ago. But his book is all about the art of showing people deep appreciation, specifically because you value them at a human level and you value the relationship. And you can certainly know that by showing people appreciation, there might be business that comes from that, but that's not the reason for showing the appreciation. So I had and still have two people in my life that are clients. They're also very, very dear friends of mine, both of whom lost their father within the last 5 years. And my father's 83 years old. He's doing okay. He's still living, but we never know the amount of time that you're going to have with your loved ones. So both of these individuals had lost their fathers. Both of them had specific names that they would call their father. And I just wanted to show these two individuals that I love them at a human level. Like I just think the world of them. So I'm not regulated the way that many financial professionals are. So perhaps I can spend more money on things that advisors can or that other people can. But I just went and I bought a Tiffany & Company frame. It's like a 5x7 frame that holds a 4x6 image. And I had hand engraved in the frame the name that these two individuals called their father. And then I went on to Facebook and found a picture of their father with them or with their children. So the grandchildren had the Tiffany & Company frame delivered to me at my house, put the picture in the frame, tried my best to bow it the way Tiffany & Company did with the box, right? It was perfect, right? I have a family member that works for Tiffany & Company, but I don't think they'd hire me. And then I mailed it. No, actually, with these two individuals, I was with them in person when I gave it to them. They were actually in the same place. And the only thing that said the Resseguie group on it, and the only thing that said Dave on it, was my handwritten note that I gave to each of them. And in the note, I don't remember exactly what I said, but it was, hey, I think the world of you as a man, as a father, as a friend. And I know so much of who you are as a husband, a father, a man is a direct correlation of the leadership that your dad was in your life. So, here's just a token of my love for you and for our friendship. And regardless of the business that comes beyond that, and I'm always grateful when and if business comes after those things. But even if those two individuals never did business with me again, the closeness that we have, oh man, you just can't beat that. And people don't get that enough. So my hope is every time they look at the frame and they look at the picture, they think about their father and that legacy and impact that now lives through them. And occasionally, maybe they think, man, Dave's just such a good dude. And I'm so grateful for his friendship, because that, I think, is just a good thing in the world.
Well, I was going to say, that just speaks to an exceptional experience. It doesn't have to be, and I'm putting this in air quotes, a client experience. That's speaking to the exceptional experience that you were providing to someone that you care deeply about. So much so, whether they're a friend, a client, an employee, someone in your COI group, it really doesn't matter. But taking that thoughtfulness, that time, that attention, it just shows. And again, I promise you that when they do look at that photo, they do associate it with you.
Yeah.
And the fact that you love and care for them. And at the end of the day, we're all people. We're all human, no matter what role or hat you have on at the time. And I think meeting people where they are and celebrating what does make us all human ultimately lends itself into building those touch points. It's honestly how you build friendship too. So, and again, a lot of times friendship turns into business opportunities, and it's a pendulum. It kind of swings back and forth. So it's a cool story. It was something that I took away, and it was impactful for me. So I feel like it would be impactful for our listeners.
Yeah. What I didn't share with the firm a few weeks ago, and what I didn't even share right now, is prior to me going to meet with those individuals to give them that gift, I had a third frame purchased. And this one just said dad on it. Jennifer, we've been married 15 years now. We lost Jennifer's dad a couple years ago. And I sat with Jennifer in the room and I said, hey, I know you know that I'm going on this trip and I'm going to see these two individuals. I want you to know that I got them these frames and I'm going to give it to them. But I said, babe, I want you to know, I call her babe. I'm like, babe, I want you to know you're my number one client, always. And I love your dad and we love your dad. And I always want us to remember him and his impact in our life and his legacy that will live through our family. So I gave her the picture, and it was the one of her dad kissing her on the cheek on our wedding day. And that one is in our master bedroom, right on the little table, right when we walk out into our living room area. And Jennifer doesn't pay me to work with her, right? Jennifer's my wife and my partner in life. But in marriage relationships, in family dynamics, in nonprofit this just show people you care about them and be unattached from anything that might come from that.
I want to go back to your story about encouraging, because I was a strategic coach in Chicago this week. I got back last night, and the leader of our group, who's a really amazing human being, lost his brother to an accident who he was very close with 3 weeks ago now. And when he told us the story Tuesday morning, it was very emotional. There were a lot of tears in the room. And one of the things he shared, though, that I want to really call out, because you said it and I heard it, and of all the things that I heard that morning, this one stuck with me and I've already applied it. And it was, relationships are not efficient. And his point was, in this high speed, high pace world and technology and all these things, true relationships are not about efficiency, and they're ultimately about time. And one of the examples he used was when there's something important, and you talked about, somebody hitting a big exam that's going to help take their career to another level. Yeah, I think our natural reaction these days is to just text them, hey, great job, congratulations, some kind of emoji. I don't do emojis. I'm not good at that. But so if you get a text message personally from me, no business text, just got to throw that in there.
Always being compliant, Tim. That's good.
Yeah, I'm trying. But it really struck me and a lot of other people in our group. I was talking to a few people and we're like, man, I text the most important people in my life, like too often. And I made a decision right there, which I've applied so far this week. And yes, it takes more time, but to call what would have been a text message last week to somebody that I love and is important to me or an important part of my life, whether it's business or personal, but my texting is only for personal use. It was a phone call. And it was amazing because I don't know, maybe we're all just getting, mired down in technology and our devices. But again, they weren't long conversations, but you get the opportunity to then convey a sense of tonality. And again, to your point, FaceTime is even more because there's a visual impression there. So I love what you shared there about the experience of connecting with people. And again, when you think about the context of this podcast, Winning Through Culture, so much of the culture of an organization and or an advisor that serves their clients is the experiences that they have. Culture's about behaviors and norms and experiences. So just figured you told that story. It reminded me of that experience I had this week. And already, again, in probably 5 instances, literally since Tuesday morning that I would have texted somebody, I said, no, I'm going to call them. And again, relationships are not efficient, but it's not about efficiency when it comes to relationships.
I do have to point out though, Tim, so we use our daily life, right, as real examples for this podcast. And I don't know that Tim's probably connected the dots here. So I'm going to throw it out there that he knows that travel is extremely important to me. So much so that I had my son, he just turned 3. We travel for his birthday. We always do a trip in October. Like travel is very, very important to my husband.
The youngest person I've ever known to have a passport.
Exactly, right? So like, I kid you not, his passport picture, he's like less than 3 months old. So point being is he's been to a lot of countries already, and we're going to keep that train rolling, or flight, I guess, in the sky. But one of the things is that before every big trip that I go on, Tim has always called. And if I haven't answered, he leaves me a voicemail, and I have them all saved on my phone. And it's nothing more, than, hey, it's Tim, I just wanted to call and say all the things, right, before you go. And I hope you have an amazing trip, and I can't wait to hear about it when you get back. So for me, that means the world. That means more than you acknowledging his birthday or anything else that's, in my life, right? Like, it's one of those things where I'm like, he heard me. He knows that's like my number one thing that inspires me and gives me so much energy. And like, that's just really cool. And like, he's saying that he learned this concept, but he's been doing it. But it's a reminder, right, that exceptional leadership in that way takes intentionality. And it took him, 30 more seconds than it did to send me a text message. But it's something that is really valuable to me. And it's something that I carry, right? I do something very similar for those that are around us in our organization. And it's because it's modeled.
Well, and what's the question I ask you after you tell me about your trip when you get back? What's the first question I ask you?
Well, there's a lot of questions. I don't know if I'm going to get it right. What's the first question you asked me?
The question is, what's the next trip?
Well, yeah, that's true. You're like, do you have something booked? You are always asking me that. Yeah.
I learned a long time ago with Amanda, if she's got a trip on the horizon, doesn't matter what's going on, she'll get through it. But if we're, grinding it out and working hard like we always do, and she didn't have a trip on the calendar.
Well, hey, LSU at Clemson, first game of the season next fall. Get that one on your calendar.
I'll bring your Ferrari down for you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I know we got to wrap it up, but yeah, as you kind of think about this conversation and just this whole idea of controlling the controllables and influencing, through relationships and experience with intention, any kind of final thoughts on leadership or influence in today's business landscape climate?
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind, and I do my best to beat this drum often, I really think the best investment that you can make, especially when you're on a budget, is a book of stamps. Like, if there were just one thing that every person listening to this conversation did, is think about the impact of writing a handwritten note to somebody that you want to encourage, or you want to give them some praise or admonishment, or you just want to say, hey, I enjoyed the coffee that we had last week, and I left our conversation so excited about the impact that you're making in people's lives. Like, most people don't get enough handwritten notes, but they usually keep them, especially when you're telling them nice things about them. So just think about who's one person in your world that you'd love to send a note to. And don't just make the call or do the FaceTime or send the text. Like, actually mail them, snail mail, like mail them a note. They'll love it. And they'll probably immediately call and say, hey, thanks so much for the encouraging words. So that'd be what I would leave you all with.
I got 2 of them last week. And back to what Amanda said about those voicemail messages. In the 21 years I've been running this organization, I have a whole Pendaflex of those notes, because that's kind of my gas tank in the tank. And if things aren't going great, sometimes I'll actually go in the file and pull it out. They do make a difference. And I think that's great advice, Dave.
Love that.
Say it was the number one thing that I packed. We did an office renovation here, and I was going through my desk, and literally that was the number one thing. And I was like, I put it in a file folder, like labeled it. Was like, please do not lose this. I don't care if you lose anything else. Just do not lose this file that I have. So I feel you there. That's awesome.
Yeah, I love that. I have a physical and electronic file that I label encouragement file. And the electronic one is voicemails or screenshots of emails that were sent. The physical one is the cards and the handwritten letters and things. But yeah.
Well, there you go.
Be an encourager and be encouraged.
Well, that's a wrap, I think, Amanda, for this episode of Winning Through Culture. Dave, we really appreciate your very valuable time and the time you spent with us today, and the support you give our organization and our advisors every day to help them be people of impact in their own way. So thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks so much for having me, y'all. Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Winning Through Culture.
Until next time, stay intentional, be impactful,
because your culture matters.